Webinars and Teams is an awesome feature, and I'm going to walk you through how to do it, especially when working with external people. My name is David Benheim, and I have tons of videos on Excel, PowerPoint, Google Sheets, Zoom, Teams. If you're using Tech of the Workplace, and I'm covering it on my channel, and I have weekly videos, so subscribe if you want to see more. So let's get going. So you can click the drop down and choose Webinar to launch it, or you can choose Schedule Meeting. Live Event is a heavier solution that I have a more elaborate video on that I'll link to in the description below. But for now, we're going to look at Webinar. So if you click on New Webinar, then that comes with a registration. And you can have everyone can register for it, or only for people in your organization, or none. Now, if you see this one grayed out, then I'll show you how to enable it in the admin settings later on. By the way, this screen becomes pretty much the same as if you just click on New Meeting and then choose the registration to be here as well. So it's the same whether you choose New Webinar or you choose New Meeting and you just turn on registration. They lead to the same things. The main difference between a webinar and a meeting, the way Teams describes it, is a registration. The only other thing is some setup options, the default options. So over here, once you've set up registration, you can add a title. So test webinar here. You can add required presenters. Now, this only allows you to add people inside your organization. Otherwise, it will not work. It won't give them the right access. So I'm going to skip that, and then I'm going to add people outside my organization later on. So then you can add location as well if you're doing a physical one as well, and other descriptions here. Now, if you want to view the registration form and edit it, you can click on this link, and then it opens up here. So you can customize it with one image. You can add a title, you can add a description, including paragraph settings, and you can add speakers. If you add speaker, then you just get name and bio, however many you need. Have these fields that people have to edit. You can add a field, and you can say, well, is this going to be one of the preset ones, like about your organization or about where you live, where you're staying, etc., or a custom question. You can have either an input or a choice question. They are quite limited. So if you have this one, you could say, for example, don't know if you want to steal the credit card details, make this full screen, it's a bit better. And then you can choose whether or not this is required. You can add a choice question. Let's ask, what industry are you in? I will say that this is quite limited, especially compared to Microsoft Forms. You can't do things like, for example, allow multi-selection. You can't add an other field, and you also can't move the questions up and down. So it is a little bit limited where you can do that, but once you're done with those, let's add one of the preset ones like organization. So once you're done, you can click save and then close it. And then here you can press send just to set up the meeting. What you'll notice is there'll be a little icon over here that shows that it's a webinar. And again, that is the same whether you go from schedule meeting and add registration or whether you click directly webinar. So to get the link, you can click on here, edit, and then customize registration form, and then copy registration link. Notice that you can also change the options at any point. Let's see what it looks like for someone editing details. Now, if you are editing it, notice that it does require a valid email address, but it can be internal or external. And if you have a required field that you leave blank, then it tells you it's required. Then you can click on here and do whatever you want in there, and then you can press register now. So this is what you'll see the screen of. It says we've sent an email confirmation to this one. So the email that comes through looks like this. So it has a calendar invite that you can just save and close like this, accept. And then you can join the event or cancel registration directly. So if I want to see the results, so I can click there and choose edit. And then I have here the registration details. This is a file I can download. So I can click on that, and then it does download the file. So this is the CSV file that I downloaded from the downloads folder. And here is the people who have registered like this. Now, another key difference is how Webinar deals with default meeting options. So if I click on the three dots and I go to meeting options, it looks gray, but you can click it. And notice that all of these are off. Who can present is only me. Now, it would have been specific people had I put people in that presenters box. But for now, I'm just going to do me because I'm going to add external people later on. Allow mic for attendees, allow camera. These are both no, whereas it is slightly different when you are setting up a meeting. Let's see the difference side by side. So on the right, we have just the meeting options. On the left, we have webinar. As you can see, these two are no's in the webinar and yeses in the meeting. The others are all the same. And who can present is everyone, but it's only me for the webinar. So as you might expect, those are the key differences. All right, and those things are pretty much everything that is different in a webinar versus a meeting. The only other thing that's different is the attendance report looks very slightly different, but besides that, it's basically the same. But we're going to next go through the key things that make a webinar into a webinar and how to add them. So when you're on this screen, you can click on plus and you can choose to add apps. And from my experience, two apps in particular are very, very important for webinars. Q&A, so you click add there. And then the other one that we're going to do is forms or polls. Now Q&A is on by default for Zoom webinars, but in Teams you have to add it. Note that you can add this to any meeting as well as for the webinar. You can say allow organizers to moderate attendee conversations. If you click that, it says it cannot be turned off once turned on. So you need to decide at the beginning. These two, you can turn them off or on as you need to. I will go through what these are very briefly. And Q&A is the ability for people to ask questions and then you can queue questions. Now, when you're in the meeting, you'll see these standard apps and these three dots. But if you have custom apps, you could see Q&A and polls there, for example. Now you can add an app by clicking the three dots and choosing add an app. Then you can find Q&A here, so you can add it during the meeting. Now, let's open up polls and see what it is like. So over here, you have questions that have been posted and you can also have discussions. So ask a question, anyone can sort of type in a question. You can add some formatting and stuff if you want. And then if you chose the option that says allow moderation, then the moderator can choose whether to push that through or to reject the question. Other participants can kind of like or laugh or do other things, and then the organizers can comment. And over here you can edit, delete them, close conversation, or even pin it. So you have questions, you also have discussions. Discussions is, let's say you just want lots of people to comment on a thread. So you could say something like this and then post, and then others are able to just comment on that. The blue ones are the questions and the other ones are discussions. So over here you can see reactions, you can see comments, you can choose to pin them, as I said before, and they pop up over here as well. And you can choose to close them. So that is a Q&A app. Essentially, you can't edit the options from here. If you want to go back and edit the options, you need to go back to the meeting. At the time of making this video, sadly, there is no support for Q&A when you are joining from a browser, but they have said that they are going to change that soon. The other app that I ask people to add is Forms. Forms is really, really useful to have polls. I am such a fan of polls in meetings because you're just giving the attendees something to do rather than just listen, which means you're automatically going to create loads and loads of engagement. So with polls, do recommend that you create them before the event, although you can add them later on. So I have another video that talks all about them. So here are some suggestions, but you can create a new one and it can be one of these three things. It can be a word cloud poll. This, I wish it wasn't called a word cloud poll because this is just a free type text box, which just forces people to just type out their answer. And then it does analyze them through a word cloud, but also it's just really good to have. So if you want to engage the audience, you can just ask a random question and get them to free type the answers. You can choose between these. Allow others to co-author means other people marked as a presenter can edit or change them. I usually do that, and keep response anonymous. That I often do, but obviously depends on what you are looking for. So let's also add a multiple choice question poll. I don't love the quizzes, I don't use them that much, but I love these ones. So it does give you these kind of extra options, or you can add your own options. And you can here tick multiple answers if you want to. Same options here. So the quiz one, which I didn't go through, this just means that it's like this one, but there is a correct answer that you can set. That's essentially the difference. So now I've got my Q&A and my polls. Notice the other things are exactly the same that you would get in a regular meeting. So over here, if we want to launch forms, so you would get this. This is polls up here. If you don't see that, then you can click there and add an app and find it as well. Now, once you're here, I've already created 2 before, and I can see the results. There are already 2 responses here. From here, I can close, and then I can reopen it later on. So I can see the response details, reopen, export, or delete it. So if I reopen the poll or start any new one, then what happens is this for everyone joining from desktop, which means that they can see what's kind of been answered, and they can also type. So if I launch the multiple choice one, this is what pops up, and then you can click submit. Now you can, if you want to create a new poll directly within here, but if I look at what the web browser view is like, it's slightly different. So here I'm in a web browser mode for the polls. Now by default, I cannot see the polls, they don't pop up, but if I go to the chat, then it tells me what's happened here. And I can vote directly from here and click submit vote, or I can vote in the other one as well. So here we are back at the organizer's view. Now, if you want to view the results or export the results, then it will download them. And here is a version of that Excel file that you can download. When you are creating a new meeting, you cannot add these apps and you cannot just share the link. Even if you put the registration here. So you have to first save and close the meeting and then reopen it, as I did by clicking on there and choosing edit. So this means we're currently in the time frame of it running. That's what that icon means there. So I'm going to join this webinar. So I'm going to join as an attendee from a browser. So I'm going to say continue on this browser. Hello, I'm going to just switch these off and join. So it says we've let you in. So here in the organizer view, I can see the lobby and I can admit, similar to the regular meeting settings. So view lobby, this would have all the people in the lobby, and I can admit all or admit one by one. So I'm going to admit this person here. Now in the participants list here, I can see that I am the presenter and the other person is an attendee. And this is usually how it should be when you are doing a webinar, that most of your people are attendees, i.e. that their camera is off. Remember that if I click on this and choose meeting options, by default, the microphone and the camera for attendees will be off, and who can present is only me. Now, I could change these things in the meeting, but that doesn't really allow for webinar style capabilities. If I want to make this person a presenter, then I can click on this and choose make a presenter. Press change, and then he becomes a presenter. Then from his perspective, he can choose to unmute himself, show his camera. Now he's able to do that because I have given all these options to the presenters. Now, if I make him back to an attendee, he will go back there. And if you want to, you have these options for attendees that you can allow all the microphones, allow the cameras, or disable the microphones and do other things. You can also lock the meeting and download an attendance list directly from here. The attendance list, you can get it from here, or I'll show you how to get that after the meeting as well. Like with regular Teams meetings, you can start recording, start transcription, and then you can share that with people after the end of the meeting, and you have these other options as well. So let's say now that I am going to be the one presenting and I want to share my screen. Now, what's really recommended if you are going to share content is use PowerPoint Live if you have some slides you need to choose. So PowerPoint Live just has a lot more capabilities than the regular PowerPoint when it comes to sharing screens. However, if you're going to share stuff that's not PowerPoint, then share your entire screen. So I'm going to choose this one. Now, if you don't see in the list, you can browse them on OneDrive or SharePoint. You will only see PowerPoint Live options if documents are saved on OneDrive or SharePoint. So if I choose, for example, this one, some of the key benefits that PowerPoint Live has, if I exit out of this, is that you can see the other slides coming up, you can jump to them, or you can just go through all the slides and they will show them like that. And then notice that the only thing the participant's seeing is what is here. This is also really good if you want to pass on who is presenting between you and other people. You can have different options as well. I can annotate on the slide like that, I can choose more actions to even translate the slides. And then the participants might see it that way, but they can even choose their own translations as they need to have it. Or if there's people who have visual impairments, then high contrast slides might be useful as well. And these are things that they can do on their own if they're using the PowerPoint app. Now, hide presenter view will just go to me seeing just the slides. And I like to use this one, which is an ability to have myself appearing in the slides right next to it. So I need to switch on my camera, put it as a standout, and then I can appear there in front of the slides. From the participants view, this is how it looks. So they can see me here on the side. This is if they are using a browser. It's slightly more advanced if they're using Teams desktop, but they can actually progress through the slides in their own time and get to presenter to jump through that. Now I can disable that. If I'm back here, I can click here to disable that. Notice that if anyone is seeing me from Teams desktop, this is what they would see. They would see me in the corner of the screen, and they would get these options as well. But if you join from a web browser, you just get slightly fewer options. But note that the most important thing is that they can see just the slides and not everything else, not my notes, etc. So here I am in PowerPoint, and the other way to do PowerPoint Live is directly from PowerPoint. As long as your document is saved on OneDrive or SharePoint, autosave is on, as you can see there. And if I can click Present in Teams, when I'm already in a meeting, it will give me this, and there it's loaded PowerPoint Live. So I can progress through my slides in the same way. Another cool feature about this is if you play a video when you're in PowerPoint Live, it plays really, really smoothly, and every audience member is actually able to rewind and play at their own pace. So even if I play here, as that's going there, let me switch to the participant view. So here I am in the participant view, and they can play it as well and rewind it as they need to. Note that although this is embedded from YouTube, that is probably the best way to do it, but you could also put your video directly in the PowerPoint and they would still have the control over there, which is quite nice. So it puts a lot of things in their hands. And the last thing that is really, really good about this feature, particularly for webinars, is that you can pass control of who can do the slide movement. So no more next slide, please, because PowerPoint Live has that for you. So if I want to record it, I can click the three dots and I can choose Start Recording. And it starts both recording and transcription like that. So it's listening to what I'm saying, but I am muted because otherwise it's sound interferent. But it should be working with the transcript there. And for example, if I share my screen, so here is the screen that I'm sharing, and it looks like that. And then I'm going to leave the meeting, and then let's see what it looks like afterwards. So I can click here and go to edit again. And then I should be able to see in the chat that I have the meeting recorded here. And I can play it directly from here. And that is able to play it like this for anyone inside the organization. But it doesn't work for someone outside the organization. For this person outside the organization, if I click on that meeting, it will ask me to sign in and it won't work. But you can make it available to anyone. So back here, when I am the person with access to the meeting, what I can do is I can click on the share button and I can say that this is available to anyone with a link. And then I can also block download, switch that on. I could set expiration dates and other things. And once I've got that, if I copy the link, then anyone is able to see the link like this, as you can see that it says there. So once you're done with the meeting, you can then download a participant report. So as I said, you can get it either from here and these three dots and download attendance list. But also, if I leave the meeting, then back in Teams, I can click there and edit. And then I have here the registration. I also have the attendance tab, and here you can see registration stuff. That is obviously only for webinars when people joined like this, and I can download it. So this is what the download looks like. It's a CSV file, not an Excel. So let me maximize that. So it has the participants, stuff about them, in-meeting activities, roles, and what they did. and then how many registered as well. So slightly different to what you get for a non-webinar meeting because you have the registration stuff as well. But the registration details would be from the other report that I showed you earlier on. So last thing is, well, what about if you have the option grayed out to share the webinar with everyone? Then you need to click the waffle up here on your web browser for Office 365. Go to the admin portal and then click Teams. And then over here, you can go to Meetings and Meeting Policies. You can press Add. And then over here, Meeting Registration, make sure this is turned on. And who can register, mark this as everyone. Not everyone in the organization, but everyone. And then you'll need to save it down here. And then you might need to quit Teams and then restart it, but you should be able to see it working if it's not already there. Note that if you are not the person in your organization with admin settings, then you'll need to speak to someone who has them to switch that on. Great, so I hope you liked that video on webinar in Teams. I certainly enjoyed making it. And if you like this content, or if you like more information on Teams, Zoom, Google Sheets, Power BI, Excel, PowerPoint, if you're using tech at the workplace, then I'm covering it on my channel. So subscribe if you want weekly videos on this content. Thanks for watching.